Incite Brilliance, brought to you by H&H.
Welcome to Incite Brilliance, the podcast from H&H. I'm Kathy Phillips and I'm taking over the reins from the lovely Christine Jarvis. Today I'm joined by Jason from the Humour Connection, and he's going to be talking all things laughter in the workplace, creating a sense of belonging and connection. And Jason, it'd be lovely if you could just start by telling us a little bit about the Human Connection. Where did this all start for you?
Yeah, so this started for me, well, it's literally about 10 years ago. I had a kind of an idea of how sharing stories with each other creates a particularly strong bond. And there's a specific type of story which combines a bit of humor and empathy, which connects people. I had the idea like literally a decade ago, but I didn't know where to apply it. And it wasn't until lockdown at the company I was working at the time. One Friday, we all shared stories with each other as just a sort of fun team building thing. And it was by far like the best team building activity we did throughout the whole of lockdown. And I thought that this idea that I had many years ago can be applied to the working world. And there's a good reason for that. And there's a huge challenge that this can actually help. And that's across the corporate world, the education sector, and various public sectors, we have lost the art of human connection. We have forgotten how to create a sense of belonging and a bond between individual human beings. We often see like team building activities as something that happens in a quarterly offsite, for example. But this is the way in which we actually work together. This should be prioritized as a fundamental way to create a bond and a sense of belonging. So how do we actually bond as human beings? Our ancestors, pre-human ancestors, used to bond through grooming. We used to groom each other, which was a one-on-one activity which would release endorphins and help us feel bonded to the group. But as our group sizes increased to beyond 150, we had to find new ways of bonding and creating a sense of belonging to the group. And they were laughter, singing, dancing, feasting, which is eating and drinking socially, and emotional storytelling. So we can harness these this literally practical way of bonding to create a sense of belonging to the group. And in the Humour Connection, we are helping teams to intentionally incorporate good-natured humour and storytelling to foster a sense of belonging and improve a bond between individual humans, individual colleagues and teams and departments. And the exciting thing is when you do create this sense of belonging, all the other metrics that people worry about, like staff retention, employee engagement, performance metrics, all naturally improve because of this sense of belonging, which is so crucial to being human.
And what do you think's behind this kind of this mindset that actually there's not as much humour, there's not as much fun in the workplace? What's kind of led us to that point? Because it feels like something must have happened because that humour's just not occurring naturally.
Yeah, so there is a bit of history to the way we've come to the modern working world and how we approach work. But kind of work is task and results focused. We don't really think and prioritize the human connection between individual humans. And work is dominated by performance KPIs and revenue targets. And in a way, this is sort of understandable because as the more senior you get in a company, in an organization, the burden of responsibility and pressure is on you. You focus more on these results and KPIs, but we've just sort of forgotten this social aspect, this human bond that we need to create for us to work effectively is the most crucial part. And I think that should be leaders' responsibility to create that belonging and bond. And then, as I said, it's quite exciting because you won't need to worry so much about customer service, about the other metrics, because they will naturally improve. Humans are capable of amazing things. they're capable of all the projects and tasks that leaders want them to solve and create. It's just this belonging and bond that we need to improve, the way in which we work together.
That whole theory that somebody who has that sense of belonging and has that sense of being part of something bigger is going to unlock much more potential than maybe raising that KPI by another 10% and just expecting people to do it.
Exactly, yeah.
So I imagine you sometimes get people sort of saying, we're quite a serious place, or it doesn't feel appropriate to bring humour into our, we're very, I don't know, intellectual, or we're dealing with very emotive or high pressure situations. What's your kind of answer to that?
I ran a workshop a couple of weeks ago with a company that was in the engineering logistical software industry. So
that sounds very exciting.
Very serious, yeah. And they said this is, it's a very serious industry that we're involved in. But what they saw in humour, they saw potential to stand out within their industry, to create humour, to create a culture that values humour and use humour either in marketing or sales to stand out. But the other aspect is that humour is not just something that's that some people like and other people don't. It's like a fundamental part of being human, and thinking that we're just a serious industry is a little bit unfair, because those people in that industry are missing out on the fun and the humour side of being a human that they're kind of that they deserve and are missing out on. So yeah, it can be a bit tricky, because there are definitely certain industries, legal, for example, but sometimes it diffuses tension. Humor diffuses tension. I read an article about NASA, and they are now selecting astronauts to go on a lot longer missions. So previously, they would select astronauts just based on who was the bravest or the most, daredevil. It's like a daredevil thing. It's an incredibly dangerous thing, right? But now the missions are going to take up to 8 months. A mission to Mars would take up to 8 months. So they're putting a lot more focus on team dynamics and the psychology of the way people work together. And one key trait that they look for in astronauts is a sense of humor. And that's because it helps to diffuse tension. It helps to boost creativity. It helps to improve team morale. So even in such high pressure situation as being an astronaut, humor is still such a valuable tool to improve team culture and work on serious projects, but maybe not take ourselves so seriously.
Yeah, I think quite often you find very funny, humorous people in really unlikely roles, don't you? I mean, I knew a funeral director who had the most wonderful sense of humour, and I think it really does kind of balance out the stress or the responsibility that somebody has. Being able to, just have a little bit of fun or a little bit of laughter at the end of the day can really kind of help people stop, move on from something that could have been quite an emotive, sensitive, whatever it is, situation, and kind of just lighten them and sort of relieve that burden a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I'd like to meet that funeral director. I think some people are just a little bit more willing to take the risk and use humor. So some people might think, oh, I'm just not that funny, or I'm not funny enough, and it kind of puts them off altogether. But we can encourage people to be creative with their sense of humor, because I think that's what essentially is. It's being creative, and kind of help to facilitate people to explore their sense of humor and give them confidence to use their sense of humor a bit more.
And how do you tease it? How do you tease that out of them, though? If somebody says, I'm not really that funny, or I'm not really that comfortable, how do you get them to give it a go?
What I typically do is I kind of first introduce the concept that there are different humor types. Okay, so one thing that people are often worried about is the idea that humor and comedy is about humiliating people.
Yeah.
It's about teasing, banter, and all that kind of thing. That relates to the superiority category of humor. This was a theory that emerged throughout history. It's a not very good general theory, but it is a type of humor. And it's where we have a sense of pride or superiority over someone or something. We can use this type of humor to bond with someone that we're close with, that we have a trusting relationship with. A well-timed funny dig can reflect the depth of your bond if you know someone that well, right? However, at the other end of the spectrum, you have quite threatening humor, which is used inappropriately. My general rule for that is to kind of keep that teasing and banter private and mutual. If it's going back and forth, then great, crack on. But if it's just going one way, then perhaps the other person isn't so comfortable with it. The other main type of humor which we can use relates to the incongruity theory. And within this type of humor are four key ingredients, which are unexpectedness, absurdity, relevance, and non-threatening. So through some exercises, I can encourage people to come up with absurd ideas, and people in the room start to laugh. Humor naturally happens. Everybody's laughing and engaging. And at the end of the activity, I often say, look, I didn't ask anyone to be funny. I didn't ask you to create any jokes. I simply asked you to be absurd. And that is like the core aspect of humor. It's just being absurd. And the humor naturally arises from that. Because, as I said at the beginning, people do put pressure on themselves to be funny. But when you see it in this new way, sort of being creative and absurd, it kind of helps people lighten up a bit and see it in a different way. But it is a bit tricky. Some people have some people are quite reserved or self-conscious about humor, and we rarely talk about it as well. We just think it's something that happens spontaneously. But just actually opening the dialogue and talking about humor more at work can help to facilitate more humor, more of the right kind of humor, good-natured humor, which engages colleagues and can be used in a variety of ways. There's lots of research that shows how humor boosts creativity because of that link with absurdity. It helps you kind of break from rigid thought patterns, and you're inviting creativity into the mind because you're letting yourself be a bit absurd and think of new ideas. You're thinking of it's like a new way of thinking that kind of opens your mind. And there's lots of quotes, I can't think of them that come to mind, but from like spiritual leaders or people who say that humor is one of the best tools for creativity and innovation.
Yeah, and I guess as children, we all naturally have that ability, don't we? That we create, observe things, we play, we make up voices, pictures, all sorts of things, and over time, that gradually falls away. So it's a little bit like can't even say it, muscle memory, isn't it? That you have to,
yeah, it's absolutely,
you have to practice
100%.
it and be conscious about it to make it part of your everyday.
You do, absolutely. Yeah, children, laughter and smiling is a huge, and playfulness is a huge part of growing up. But there's what's called the humor cliff, where
that sounds very dramatic.
It does, yeah, it does sound very dramatic. Well, it kind of is when you see the image. It's a study or survey from Gallup which shows that from the age of about, I think it's like 21, we laugh and smile a lot less as we go through life, and then we laugh and smile more as we retire around the age of 60 to 70.
And that's got nothing to do with your children leaving home or having finishing work or anything like that, honestly.
Yeah, I think there is room for humor and laughter at work. We just have to sort of encourage it and facilitate it, encourage people to use it more.
So how do you find leaders respond to this? Because as you say, leadership tends to set the tone, doesn't it? And there's a lot of conversations about bringing your whole self to work, being your authentic self. How do they? Is this a kind of tension between how people perceive that they achieve status and influence versus actually how they do create that kind of connection through bonding and being themselves and being human and having those absurd experiences that they share with people? Being prepared to laugh at yourself a bit.
I think one of the main things for leaders is that as they get more senior and the responsibility increases, the pressure increases, they're less likely to use humor or even be authentic. And in a way, it's like leaders have to work the hardest to remove this kind of this sort of shield that they put up to appear successful. You could argue that leaders are they're simultaneously rewarded for being in a senior position, but simultaneously punished because they have to appear more successful and invaluable than ever. And so it's tricky. It's hard for them to be authentic, and I think, and use humor. In that workshop I mentioned, that was in the engineering one, the CEO was actually in the workshop, and he said at the end, he was like, that was really good, and I used to enjoy humor all the time before I became a CEO, and it just kind of it kind of sucks. He didn't use these words, but it kind of can sap the humor out of you, this pressure. But it's important to create a space for humor, and it's more about, instead of giving leaders something else to do, be funny, right? It's about it's about more like noticing the unexpected moments. Noticing what's funny is more important. Research shows that's more important than being funny, is just simply noticing unexpected moments and signaling that you have a sense of humor.
Okay.
And one of the easiest ways to release humor is through story sharing, which is a great way for people to bond and connect.
So have you got a particular story that you use to kind of bond with people? I'm going to ask you to spill the beans now.
Yeah, so I do. I've got one. It'd be good if you have one as well, Kathy.
Right, okay.
You're making me
Be on the
share one.
spot.
I do. I've got. So there's a couple that come to mind. There's one I used to share, which was particularly embarrassing. Which is good. It's a good way to reveal a bit of vulnerability. But the key points, the key aspects to the story that we're kind of encouraging is this unexpectedness and absurdity. And I had this unexpected and absurd experience a few years ago. When I was in my 20s, I went traveling. I actually lived in Colombia for a couple of years teaching English, and I spent the first few weeks traveling. And I ended up in Panama, and I was getting my first overnight bus to the beach, a destination on the beach, and it was going to be like an 11-hour journey overnight. It's like one of the most popular ways to travel in Latin America. It's like night buses. So I was all excited about my first overnight bus journey, and I get on the bus, and I look around, and everybody's wearing like winter clothing. Like, bear in mind, it's absolutely boiling outside. It's like plus 30 degrees, and that's in the day or night time, and I'm just wearing swimming shorts and a t-shirt. And I'm looking around just like absolutely baffled by I haven't seen winter clothing since I'd arrived in Panama. And I'm thinking, how can it be so much colder where we're going at this beach? So then I think, okay, well, maybe we stop off like in the mountains on the way there and it's cold there. So anyway, totally confused, but we set off. And as we're leaving the bus terminal, the aircon starts to sort of like rumble into force, and as it kind of gets going, it becomes more and more louder and louder and stronger until it's like absolutely freezing. It's gone from like 30 degrees to like 3 degrees, and it was like that the entire journey. I was like absolutely freezing the whole way there, and I looked I realized this is just like the culture. Like the buses, apparently they're always cold at night. And I knew I was going to tell you this story. So I looked on ChatGPT to see why this is. And there's no really even technical reason. It just says that it's easier to keep it colder than too hot. So it's just become a cultural norm. And it said at the end, make sure to wrap up warm so you don't turn into a human popsicle at 3 a.m. And that's what literally happened to me. I turned into this popsicle at 3 a.m. And I remember just being so relieved when we finally got there, stepped off into the sun. It was like incredible. So I learned my lesson.
And nobody offered you a coat either.
They didn't know. Like the bloke next to me, like his huge coat sort of like was like covering my wrist a little bit. And that's the only cover that I had than my shorts and t-shirt.
I bet that's a real hobby of regular night bus travellers. And wait for the accidental tourists to get on, and then watch them go blue slowly throughout the night.
Yeah.
Oh, well, in the spirit of sharing, then I suppose I ought to tell you a story. To be honest, I probably have a catalogue of really embarrassing stories because I just
Yeah.
lurch from one to the other. So, but this one, this particular one takes place in a world that's probably hard to imagine for most of our listeners because it would have been the what would it mid-90s. So just to set that in context, there is no internet. Hard to believe. There is no email.
Yeah.
So this is my early in my career. One of the parts of my job was to hand deliver a printout of the company's report and accounts to the board of directors. So because
Okay.
there was no other way of getting it to them, you literally didn't. I don't think I even had a computer, so I'm really giving my age away now. But we're talking basic technology. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
equivalent of email was a printed copy of the report and accounts and a red Nissan Micra and a street map
Okay.
of City
That's
of
the
Hull.
delivery method.
Very important because there's no sat nav either. I should throw that in for good measure. So I have a board of directors who are scattered around the city. I am not from Hull, although I now consider myself to be from Hull, but at the time I'd only lived there 4 years, not driven very much. And so off I go. I've got a list of addresses, I've got little crosses on the map, and I'm going around with these envelopes, kind of handing them out. And I get to this one, right in the other side of the city, over in the east side of the city. Park the car, I'm looking around, I cannot find this address. The number is just not on any of the houses. So in desperation, it's starting to get a bit dark, I'm starting to get a bit panicky about it. I thought I'm just gonna have to knock on a door and just ask if they know this person. And they were all pretty big houses. It was a nice looking street. So I thought, right. So I knocked on the door and I waited. They're looking keen and smiley, and the door opens, and there's this man wearing a pair of jogging bottoms and nothing else. Which fine. You answer the door.
Yeah.
But then I realise it's John Prescott.
No way.
So at that point, you've kind of got two ways to go, haven't you? You either go, "Oh, hello, Mr. Prescott," and ask the question,
Yeah.
or you do what I did, pretend you don't know who this man is. So I went down that route. I don't know why, but in the moment, I thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I just sort of went, "Could you tell me where so-and-so lives, please?" And he went, "Oh, yes, it's next door." And I went, "Thank you very much." And the door shut. And I think probably he looked out of his window and saw me sitting in my Nissan Micra going, "No."
Head in
And
hands.
it was just one of those, you talk about absurd situations. It was one of those
Totally.
things. And then 2 weeks later, there was a big story broke in the national press about, it was called Bin Gate, where somebody had been rifling through his bins and pulling out private correspondence and things. And as a result, all the the house was then completely secure and nobody could get in or out without going through a buzzer and everything. But part of me can't help but think, was it me that
Yeah.
started this? Should I really have a bit more security? So,
Like a national lockdown
absolutely,
of politicians due to you.
So yeah, so that was fun.
Amazing. But
I still blush about it now when I think about it. It's one of those, as you say, it's one of those stories that you look back on and think, did that really happen? Did I really do that?
well, that is amazing. Thanks for sharing. That is a beautiful example of unexpectedness. Like of all the people you could have said who can answer that door, I
You
was
didn't see
not
that one, did
expecting
you?
you to say. No, absolutely not. Wasn't expecting you to say John Prescott. But brilliant story, and these stories are a particularly powerful way to bond for a variety of reasons. So, firstly, it's one of the fundamental ways that we bond with people. It's in that list that I mentioned earlier. It's one of the key ways we bond. It's through emotional storytelling. So it helps to foster belonging. In both our stories, we had kind of a mini kind of failure or an unexpected kind of moment. And as we know, to create psychological safety, a key part is being open about mistakes and failure. So we can foster a culture of psychological safety by being open about our less fortunate moments, for example. And then finally, the other way that it helps to foster belonging is through empathy. Now, we empathize with people. We empathize with people's emotions, not necessarily the circumstances that they were in.
Yeah.
So you have never, maybe you have, but I don't know if you've got on a bus in Panama and ended up freezing
Can't
cold.
say that I
And
have.
I have never knocked on John Prescott's door, but I still know exactly how you would have felt, and you know how exactly how I would have felt. We've all had these experiences. We all know exactly how it feels for something to go slightly wrong, a slightly unexpected moment, that cringy, awkward feeling. We've all had that feeling. So it's just a really powerful, great way to foster empathy between people, across departments and across seniority levels as well.
And in running I mean, you're a man on a mission to bring humour back into the
Yes.
workplace.
Yeah.
Have you got an example of where you just saw that moment, that you were running one of these sessions and something happened, and then all of a sudden the room kind of got it all in one go? Have you got?
So what the moment that I kind of referred to it earlier on, it's when we do these absurd activities, right, where people come up with absurd ideas, and they go back and forth, and we do these like kind of fun activities, and there is typically lots of laughter between people. It's really fun and a really kind of engaging activity. And at the end, when I say I didn't ask you to be funny, I didn't ask you to create humor. People always stop and listen and kind of really appreciate that, because they didn't feel any pressure to be funny. If I asked them to create some comedy, it would be completely different. Another incident that I had, which I really enjoyed, was with this marketing department, and they wanted to incorporate a bit more comedy into their campaigns. And they were already doing quite a good job of incorporating comedy. And I introduced them to these different types and theories of humor: the superiority, the incongruity theory, that has those 4 ingredients that I'd invite listeners to write down, because this can help them when you're watching funny content on social media, or something happens in life. You can help to improve your humor awareness by thinking, how does it align with these 4 ingredients? So you have unexpectedness, absurdity, relevance, and non-threatening. And with this marketing team, they came up with this like brilliant concept within one of their activities, just by being introduced to this like kind of new framework that they had. It just kind of helped this creativity go. It was with one of their clients that was one of the train companies in the UK. So it was just great for them to see. It was just great for me to see, like, they were already doing a good job creating comedy, but being introduced to this new concept gave them the freedom to come up with absurd ideas and realize that is okay. This absurdity is a core part of humor, and we can embrace it. And they came up with a genuine idea that they put into practice, which was cool.
So some of our listeners might be sitting here thinking, oh, actually, maybe I need to just foster a little bit more humor in my workplace with my colleagues. Have you got one thing that you would say, if you tomorrow, just give this a go and see where you get to? What would you, as a warm up for them, obviously, to come and participate in something that a bit more structured?
I would say the easiest way is releasing these stories.
Yeah.
Start pondering through your life experiences. When have you had these kind of unexpected and absurd moments? To give people a bit of confidence as to why people like these stories, and that incongruity theory I mentioned, because what I do often hear from people is this notion that what one person finds funny, another might not. Whilst we all have preferences and tastes in life, that incongruity theory is universal and applies to human beings around the world, across all cultures. The relevance aspects of these stories is that empathy that I was talking about. We all know how it feels for things to go slightly wrong, or to experience a slightly awkward moment. And so people love these stories. It helps to create a warmth, a sense of connection between people. And people appreciate these stories across all over the world, and from various walks of life, ages. Anyone appreciates these stories. So that would be the one way. And if I could give you another example as well, it's about this humor awareness thing, and start noticing in just in life when you find something funny, is just spend a second and a moment just thinking, where was the absurdity there, where was the unexpectedness, and you'll start to see it. And it's almost, the way I describe it, it's a little bit like learning a language. It's helpful to know the grammar of learning a new language, and helpful to see this kind of structure of the absurdity, relevance, and so on. But then it can actually improve your wit, because then you don't need to keep on rethinking these ingredients. It becomes just part of your humor language, if you like, and it does improve your wits. Yeah, so the absurdity is the key part of humor, and the storytelling.
Yeah, and you can see people on the TV who have got that absolutely nailed, can't you? That look at something that we all accept as just something that we do, but they're constantly thinking, well, why on earth do we do that? And then they sort of build a whole story around it, and you think, why have I never questioned that at all? What is
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. And another key thing about those TV shows, like you get those panels or the comedy quiz shows, that kind of thing. One thing that one reason why they are witty, and is because they're not afraid to say the wrong thing. They're not afraid to say something that might not be funny, because if you start to let that creep in, then and you start to think, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that, then it can hinder your creativity. Now, obviously, I'm not, there's certain rules around being inclusive. I'm not talking about offending people.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this absurdity, this creative absurdity, where we're laughing at the nature of life itself, and human nature in general. And what you'll see they're so quick-witted, they just say the first thing that comes to their mind. They don't even think about it, they just blurt it out.
Yeah.
And that's just sort of like this kind of innate creativity that they're letting out. And so I think they've perfected that. They're not afraid to make mistakes, and that's an important part of creativity and psychological safety, is not being afraid to make mistakes.
And even when they say something that isn't funny, they make a joke about the fact that nobody's found it funny, don't they?
Exactly, yeah.
They even managed to flip that,
Yeah.
Clearly they're far more skilled than we would expect people necessarily in the workplace to be. But quite often they've come out of like teaching roles, or doctors, or somewhere where they've used humour as part of that situation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that kind of empathy and telling of funny stories is also quite helpful in giving feedback, isn't it? You are sharing your experience of something similar, which makes it feel less of a kind of that you're the only one that's ever done this.
Yeah, it helps to cultivate that empathy and that openness, which is essentially psychological safety. And you cultivate psychological safety by modeling it yourself, and being open about mistakes or failure yourself, and encouraging people to be open about things. And it needs to be nurtured. Psychological safety isn't something that you just do a one-off exercise. It has to be nurtured over time. And we've got an abundance of these stories. And so we can, tap into this reservoir of belonging and connection to help to encourage storytelling as part of as an important part of company culture.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you very well on your journey to bring humour and fun back to the workplace. It's something that at H&H we're absolutely passionate about. We all spend so much time at work. We can use humour to incite brilliance right across the UK's places of work. So thank you very much, Jason from the Humour Connection, for joining me today.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for having me on. Thanks.
And if you'd like to find out more about the Humour Connection, you can check out the details on our website, which is included in the description below. And if you've enjoyed the podcast and want to catch up with the latest episodes as they come available, just click the subscribe button and they'll pop straight into your inbox. Thank you.
Incite Brilliance, brought to you by H&H.